to Be the Light TV, where we are shedding light and bringing glory to God. I am your sister and your host, Prophetess LaGerrica. I am a prophetess and messenger for the Lord. The Lord blesses me to be able to prepare the way, His way, the way of the Lord, in the lives of others by giving you your next step on your journey with Him. However, today, I'm actually not here to prophesy. I'm not here to prophesy. I'm not here to give you the word of the Lord, though I am here to give you something that was inspired by God for me to do. So I'm actually here today to be able to share with you my testimony. That's right, my testimony in regard to coming to Christ and my life's journey and my life's testimony. You know, I can look at my life, and I always say this, and see the grace of God, because I look at the decisions I made. I look at the situations that I was put in without my consent as a little girl, and yet even still being where I am in Christ. It is nothing but the grace of God. And so I want to be able to share that with you today. I want to be able to share with you my process. I want to be able to share with you my journey. I want to be able to share with you my testimony. So today will be a lot more laid back. You know, if I had this setting, I probably would be like with a couch. Got a little mug, my Michigan mug from Starbucks with my water in it, actually. We're just gonna chill and relax. You know, this is me like sitting on a couch, chilling and talking to you and telling you about the goodness of the Lord in my life. So my testimony begins with the very fact I grew up and lived in Cleveland, Ohio. I was born to mom. I was born to my dad, of course. My parents were not married when they conceived me. And so actually, my dad was involved in another relationship during that time in which my mom didn't know about. So my parents were together, but they were not married. And so when I came into the picture, my dad at the time lived in Cleveland, Ohio. He's not from Cleveland, Ohio, but lived here at the time. And you'll actually hear this a part of my testimony. My dad does a lot of moving around for work. Even still, to this day, he still makes moves for work purposes. So my dad was in Cleveland, Ohio at the time. And as a little girl, I grew a very strong attachment to my father. I had a very strong and secure attachment to my father, to the point where, you know, it didn't matter how long I did or didn't see him. When I seen him as a little girl, I knew that's my father. I would get excited, be happy, just be all over him, right? You know, I even remember moments, even now, of when, you know, I would wrap myself around my dad's leg, very attached to my dad. Well, when I was around 4 years old, what ended up happening was that my dad moved for work purposes. And so that left me without my father. And as a 4-year-old little girl, I felt that. I'm 25 years old to now, and I can look back at 4 years old and remember, like, when my dad left, the kind of void that left in my heart. I felt very unworthy. My mindset was, if I was good enough, then my dad would have stayed. He wouldn't have left. And these were things that would happen without me knowing. Mom had no idea. She didn't know to look out for the fact that her daughter may be affected in this way. You know, a single parent, your mindset is pretty like, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to raise this child. And at that point, my mom and my dad had my little brother. So my mom has 2 children by my dad. And she's like, okay, I'm going to do it. We're going to do this. We're going to do it. So I was pretty much raised by my mom and my aunties. I have 5 beautiful, amazing aunties, and my grandmother, who's no longer here, but they all played an integral role in raising me and my brother. In fact, you know, between me and all of my cousins, I have tons of cousins. Between me and all of my cousins, we were raised as siblings. It's like, for me, it's so funny. But before my brother and I started going to daycare, we would be with my grandmother during the school year, and then you know, then we'll go home with mom, and we lived a little bit like further away for purposes that my mom chose. She made a decision that she thought would be best for education and moved us further away from where she grew up. However, we were always with my grandmother's house in the hood, to be honest. And I loved it. We loved it. We loved being with our family. And so we spent that time then. And, you know, I always remember, like, oftentimes, like, I remember my mom would go to work. This was, like, probably in the summertime when I'd be at my grandmother's house and my mom was at work. You know, we would eat dinner there. So it's, like, it was very communal, very familiar, like, very family-oriented. It's how we grew up. And so that's basically who I was raised by. And as I continue to grow older, you know, our household, you know, with my mom, it was a believing household in the sense that you believed in God, but there was no lordship. We did not, as a family, have tools to what that even looks like. Relationship with Christ wasn't a thing because we didn't know. And I'll share how I came into relationship with Christ. And it was to the point I didn't even know that that was what was happening. I didn't know I was building a relationship with Christ, but that is exactly what was happening. I'm going to take a little sip. That's why we have this here, right? So I was building a relationship with Christ and didn't know it. And that's because we didn't have those structures in my family. So around the time, I think it's when I was 10, it's where I started, 9, 10 is when I started to become very conscious and aware of like my appearance and wanting to change it. I think that's a different testimony for a different day, but I struggled a lot with self-esteem an image because I was a thicker, dark-skinned girl. I mean, I share my testimony in my book, Grace Over Perfection, Mercy, Grace, and Love Are the Standards, about how because I was darker and thicker, not society's or the world's view of beauty, I struggled a lot. And I think that's around the time when I became more aware of that, like, I'm a little bit darker, you know, I'm a little bit thicker than others. And I think that's when I realized that. And so I started trying to outwardly make up for what I thought I lacked. So this is around the time where I started like working out twice a day, very unhealthy, eating salads. Because at this point, my mom had made a decision, like in our household, she's like, okay, we're not going to like eat the same old snacks all the time. So she started buying healthy snacks. Our house was known as the snack house. Like everybody knew when they came over my mom's house that they was gonna get some snacks. My mom switched it up and started buying healthier snacks. And so just very like only 4th grader bringing salads to lunch. It was just very unhealthy, right? But that was me making up for that sense of unworthiness that I felt. That felt like it was taken from me when my dad left, but nobody was there to put it back. I didn't know how to put it back. Mom didn't know to put it back, and I did not know the Lord. And so it was a struggle. By the time I was 12, I had lost my virginity already. Yes, I'm going there. I already started having sex at 12 years old, and the individual I lost my virginity to was an 18-year-old man. Searching, looking for that acceptance. And I would say from that journey on, you know, as I grew older, my cousins and I kind of grew apart. So where we were as family oriented, my grandmother already passed away at this point. We weren't as close. And so naturally I started getting more friends at school, and getting into things that were not the best for me. Trying to always be that friend that everybody needed. You know, I noticed early on, I used to wonder, why is that? You know, I was a friend that like people would get so deep and so vulnerable with, but like wouldn't always call me to have fun with. Sometimes they would. When I'm like, why? Like, don't they call me to have fun? Why do they only like, why am I only like the vulnerable? Then they get around other people, they act like this total different person. What is that? But I didn't realize that that was a gift that God had given me, and I didn't even see it then, didn't have eyes for it, right? But I noticed it to the point when I was in high school, and they had to do the career exams, and our counselor, shout out Miss Young McCants, right? I remember I sat in her office one day, and I told her what I wanted to do, and it's something I was interested in, but it was kind of like, oh, I'm really good at doing it, so I'm gonna do that. Can I do this? And you know, y'all, she told me no. you have more potential than that. And she told me to basically go back and look again. And that was a blessing from the Lord, because I did. I went back to look again. And that's what I said, you know what? I would be a great psychologist. Now, I said psychologist because I looked at therapists and, 15, 16-year-old LaGerrica was like, they not making a lot of money. They're not making a lot of money, so I'm going to go ahead and go with the psychology side of things because they making the money. And so that's what I did, to backtrack a little bit. My time in high school was spent with me smoking, spent with me drinking and partying and just doing, I gave my body away continuously to guys who did not you didn't have to make a commitment. It was basically like, if I wanted to do it, I was going to do it. I had no self-control. But again, you have to realize, like, then I would have said, oh, I'm doing it because I want to. But it was a much deeper void. The reason why I felt I needed to do it is because that sense of unworthiness and not feeling valuable. And so this cycle kept happening. I would get involved with boys, then we'll, break up maybe one time. And when I say break up, that doesn't necessarily mean we're together. We just separated. Maybe we'll get back together. Maybe we won't. And I ended up getting a boyfriend, I want to say, by 11th, 12th grade year of high school, right before I went off to college. And around the time I went off to college, y'all, that's when Jesus turned my life around. I went to school in Michigan, hence you can see why I have this mug. I actually lived out there for about 5 years between college and moving out there after I graduated college. But I ended up getting a boyfriend, and I was so not good to him. I did whatever I wanted, when I wanted. It was to the point, y'all, that I would tell him, excuse me, my throat's a little dry, I'm not going to have sex with you, but then I'll go and have sex with other individuals. And then I would tell him about it. And I would apologize, but even still, that's not right, right? I'm sharing this all for a reason. Because by the time I got to college, him and I, just going to pat my face, were on a break. Not together, but very much so still involved. And when I started off college, I had 2 friends. One was from high school, and another one we met like the first or second day of school. We all just clicked and like were tight, hanging on each other 24/7. By the time second semester hit, I had lost those friendships. And this guy that I was in a relationship, or close to, very close, he was in my life for like 3 years. Basically was in a relationship without the title. I think I started to notice then that things were changing. You all have to excuse me a little bit. But even when we weren't together, we were still kind of close. And I didn't have those friendships anymore. Him and I talked a lot. And even then I noticed that he was kind of getting distant. I had said some things to him that was selfish because he wasn't giving me my way with something. And I feel like some of it he kind of took out of context. But some of it, most of it, majority, about 75% was me being selfish. And I remember, and I'm getting very vulnerable here. I'm sharing a lot. And it's purpose. It's on purpose because it's showing the glory of God in my life. And it's giving him all the glory. And I remember in February of 2016, pulling out dates. Him and I had sex for the last time. When I went back to school, I was home on a break. And I went back to school, he started acting even more funny. And girls, we know how that feels. When a guy just kind of just like acts funny after sex. But he did. And I couldn't understand why. Well, long story short, turns out they probably, he probably would say that wasn't the case, but his goal was to get me back. I thought we were moving towards a relationship. It was to the point I thought I was going to marry him. Like, to myself, I'm like, out of all the men, and I thank God for this, because my thought process, my processing at the time was, out of all the men I've ever been with, he has done me the best. Why would I not settle down with him? He wants to be with me. Why would I not? And I started to submit. Now, see, I, at this point, had been at Christian camps. I had accepted Jesus into my life. And I had a little ritual of, I would pray at night. Just a little quick prayers of just like lifting up my family and other things that was on my mind and my heart. But it was the same prayers every night that I would pray. It's like I almost couldn't go to sleep. I remember a time, I would never forget this time, I was in bed. My roommate was in bed. It was silent, dark. And I said, I didn't say my prayers. I got out of my bed, got on my knees, prayed, then got back in the bed. But that was just what God built in me. He built that in me. So my mindset, without even knowing that I was like looking at things biblically, I was submitting to him. And I think he was noticing it. Like, oh, she don't talk back like how she used to. She ain't as snappy as she used to be. And I wasn't submissive from the right place because I had not been healed yet. I had not been made whole. I was just moving in a direction that I thought that I was supposed to do. I thought he was the one. Again, like I said, that time I got back to school, he like literally like dogged me. Like for real, dogged me. And I couldn't understand. I'm like, where is this coming from? And it's like almost all that buildup and baggage that he had. He just threw at me all at once and wanted to tear me down. And there was a little back and forth between us. And I was just boo-hooing crying. And I always explain the story. I say, like, I was boo-hooing crying. Like, I just lost somebody. I cried more about that breakup than when I cried when I lost my grandmother. Now, granted, I was a child. But I cried more about that breakup. And, you know, my mom, she said this to me. And I share this testimony not to say that my mom was wrong for this. I'm sharing it to say that it drew me to God. My mom said to me, she said, you cry about it this one time and don't cry about it again. Sounds right, right? I knew she was saying it out of love, but I knew at that moment I said, well, I can't cry to you anymore because I'm going to cry about it more than this one time. And so after those moments, it was very dark for me. I remember to the point, like, I would just be sitting in the shower, just sitting on the floor crying. And I was a natural hair girl. Y'all know, like, the twist styles, you just don't be getting your hair wet. I would just sit on the floor and just cry. And I remember praying to God, and I would say, Lord, I deserve this. God, all the things I've done in my life, I deserve this. God, I did him wrong. I deserve this. God, I did this all those times. I deserve this. And my prayer was like, God, the consequences of it, help me to get through the consequences. My mindset was that I thought it was the Lord getting me back. And I said, God, help me to get through this. If you're going to get me back, help me to get through it. Hallelujah. Help me, Jesus, get through it. And it's so sad, but it was my mindset. It was my mindset. And that's where I met the Lord, y'all. Because I started journaling. Oh, I wish. Here, I can bring, this is actually my last journal that I released. I have my own copy, of course. But I started journaling to the Lord. Oh, this is my lifeline right here. I started journaling to the Lord. I still have my first journal. And I would just tell God how I felt. And the thing is, the Lord is so good. The Bible says, taste and see that he is good. And I started to taste and see. And I said, wow, he really is good. A relationship was being formed. I would tell him about my test. God, help me, bless me with this test, you know. Even during that time, God gave me new friends, and they were Christian friends, which was big for me. It was a sign of God that they were Christian friends, because that started me on my journey, y'all. My journey with Christ started me journey. The more I tasted, the more I saw, the more I wanted. And so that summer, I began to keep seeking and keep seeking and keep seeking. And, you know, I was already involved with this Christian Oregon campus, and I eventually got more involved. I eventually went to church, and the Lord he just started to build and shape me and mold me step by step. I learned to hear the Lord's voice early on because I didn't have anything else. You know, I've had vivid moments of me coming home from campus, just crying out to God, reading his word. I remember I used to read his word. I didn't even completely understand it. But I would read his word and I would say, God, I want to spend time with you daily. And I wasn't there yet, so I would aim for 3 to 4 times a week. But God would just move on my heart, and I would come my heart of worship. In those days is when it grew. And I didn't even notice it then, but that's when my healing started. You all, the Lord is he's like a best friend to me now. He's like a husband. And I've had so many more testimonies to share, but God brought me and drew me to himself. And he started it with journaling. Journaling was how the Lord brought me to himself. And so I know the power of connecting with God through journaling. And so since I started journaling, and I started a little bit before then. For some reason, it was God. I wanted to bring a journal to college to kind of start my career and journey. So I started journaling before then, but it was like silly, vain things, all things me wanted to work on myself, but it was just so unimportant in ways that I didn't know yet. So I started journaling in 2015 when I first went off to college, 2016 after the heartbreak. Y'all, I have journaled literally almost daily. I would say a strong 98% of the time. I don't go many days without journaling unless I'm giving myself a break from feeling like I have to record everything. Because another thing is, sometimes I like to just enjoy things with the Lord without feeling like I have to write it down. And so sometimes I'll meditate on it and think on it before I write it down. But the past 6 years of my life, are in my journals. Maybe I'll insert a clip. Hey family, so as promised, here is a overlook of the journals that I have collected and written in over the years. I kind of broke it down by year. So as I showed you or told you before, I kind of started my journey in 2015, in this journal actually, 2015. And then it went into 2016, summer 2017. This is also 2016, 2017. I often wrote in these simultaneously. This was my first Christian journal. And then, so this is 2015, 16. This here, you see, starting to appear is 2017. This is 2017, 2018. This here is all 2018. And then this row here is 2019. And then y'all, because 2020 was obviously that year, okay? All 3 rows of these are 2020. So let's see, in 2020, I had 6, 9, 11 journals throughout the year. That's almost a journal a month. Here is 2021 here. And then down here. And then those 2 here are 2022. And then here is the one I'm currently working now through, which if you would have saw on my Instagram, I just released this journal not too long ago. Actually, I've redesigned this journal since then. So here is the beginning portion, but it's so funny to kind of look through these because I can look at these journals and know what was up, okay? So look here, this journal right here, this is when the Lord spoke to me more clearly about Be the Light TV. The first time he ever spoke to me about Be the Light is here when he called me as an evangelist. It was in here. I have other notes of when he called me as a prophet. This is the first journal when I told you about that heartbreak I was writing about. It's all up in here, all up in here. This journal means so much to me because this was a journal that God spoke to me a couple of things. One of the things that I would write a book. He told me one day, right? And I wrote that in 2016. I wrote a book 3 years later is when I started. So it's so funny kind of looking at that, and it's very nostalgic for me. I'm like, oh, I remember. This is when God spoke to me about school, me going back to get my master's. I remember, and some of you may see journals that you may have gifted me. I don't know. But yeah, these are all my journals. I think I counted about 37 of them, and I'm probably missing some because sometimes I kind of place them in different places and I pull them out in different seasons. But this is everything. Yeah, so I told you I would show you, and here we go. A lot of journals, y'all, throughout the years, and they really record my life. If somebody wanted to record my life from 2016 to now, they'll have it in those journals. And that's where it started for me. And so I want to be able to offer you the beauty that God has given me in journaling. I just showed you my most recent journal that I created, but I also have a dream journal that I am releasing, and you'll see it here on the screen. It's called the My Dream Journal Notebook. It's a space for you to be able to interpret your dreams with the Lord. So once you have confirmation that a dream is from the Lord, to figure out with him and discern with him what it means. You know, God started speaking to me in my dreams. He probably has been always doing it, but I really didn't really notice it. I would really say until like a little 2019, but probably mostly 2020. I want to say 2021, honestly. Last year is when I finally started to notice that God was speaking to me prophetically in my dreams. I had moments before then, but I think prophetically, 2021. And just in, let's see, Lord, December of 2021 before then, but the Lord put on my heart to have a separate journal for my dreams so that when I have a dream, right, or I want to remember one, I don't have to go flipping through pages to look for a dream. I can just go on my dream journal, and sometimes you have an idea of the date and month, go look and find a dream, right, and read what the Lord wrote. Well, I want to be able to offer you space to do that through the My Dream Journal notebook. It will be available to purchase on Amazon and on my personal bookstore on my website. Just having that space to record your dreams with the Lord, interpret and hear what he's speaking to you through your dreams. And then have a space where it's all in like one notebook, right? And not you having to, like, imagine me with over 20 journals, looking for a dream and having to go through all those journals to find which one. Probably wouldn't do it, you know? I'm just being honest. So, yeah, I want to be able to just create the opportunity for you. And yeah, my prayer is that you were blessed by today's video. Like I said, a little bit different of me just sitting back and sharing my testimony. But my prayer from this is that God would get all the glory and that God would have his way. So until then, people of God, I so look forward to seeing you. Be sure to like, comment below your thoughts or how God bless you during this testimony. Click the notifications bell so that you will know when I'm uploading and when extra content is coming out on a weekly basis. I tend to just follow the Lord with that. I'll also, while we're here, leave my resource library information down below so that, you know, if you want to connect to the ministry and purchase resources to help you grow and develop in your life and in your relationship with God, you'll be able to do so. So then, people of God,